Let's focus on you're on mute because that says a lot to me. So I'm
Yeah,
hoping that says a lot to the other leaders on board listening. But you're on
yeah.
mute. Talk about that just a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And the title came from, I was doing some research when I was writing the book. You're on mute was the most used phrase in business in 2020. So as we all launched into the online world with the advent of the pandemic. And so what I realized after working with organizations throughout that couple of years of the pandemic or the initial period was that there was, in some cases, a real reluctance for leaders to really engage in online or hybrid environments, and that their leadership was suffering as a consequence of that, and their people were not feeling connected to them, and they weren't feeling like that they had a leader because they just didn't have visibility of them. And so You're on Mute does a couple of things, or focuses on a couple of things. The first one is the big picture strategic importance of having a way that we do leadership online in our organization. How do we stay connected with our people? How do we incorporate the online and hybrid environments and workspaces into how we lead? As a leader, how do I show up in these spaces from a strategic perspective? We have to have, for example, I worked with an organization that hadn't brought their leadership team together for over 18 months because they couldn't do it face to face for
Hmm.
various lockdowns and all of that sort of thing. And so they hadn't had a strategic leadership team forum in that period of time. How do you have a connected leadership team who is on the same agenda leading their team if you haven't actually brought them together? And so we have to find ways of doing that in this flexible working world. Otherwise, from a strategic, we're not being strategic.
Right.
That's the first thing.
Yeah,
And
that's bottom line.
if we don't have a plan and we don't have an aspiration, we're not really leading. So that's the first thing. So the strategic piece of really think about, how do we do online, hybrid, flexible, that whole space as an organization. But then there's the individual connection, the individual ability and expertise to show up online as a leader. Now, some
Mhm.
people are great at it. They had great skill in the online environment already, or they've developed it, but others have not. So what I talk about in the book is that learning how to turn Zoom on or to land in an MS Teams space, that's not leading online. That's the equivalent of getting to the meeting room door. It's
Mhm.
what you do after you walk through the door that makes the difference, that has the impact, that influences others. And so, as leaders, we need to become not just adequate, we need to become proficient in the online, hybrid, flexible spaces that we're now being asked to work in, because otherwise, we don't have influence, authority to make a difference. And so, that's everything from get your camera angle right, even if
Yeah.
you're working, so that we're not looking down on you or up at you or any of those things, making sure that you can be seen. So all the really simple logistical, just get your setup adequate so that we can relate to you and we're not distracted by
Right.
something that's going on by the technology. Because the technology, we don't want it to be an interference. We want you to be able to connect. We want you to have visible leadership. We want people to trust in your leadership. And so, as an individual, that means you've got to get good at it. And so, if that means you have to go and learn some stuff, then do that, because otherwise, your leadership is going to suffer. And that means your team is going to feel the impacts of that. And it's not serving any of you. So, this is just a personal responsibility for every leader, I believe.